In the beginning, the heavens were at peace, but the pride of a divine being precipitated the greatest rebellion the universe has ever witnessed. In the earliest days of creation, God established his order in the vast and immense heavenly realm, where the angels dwelt in harmony. These beings, perfect in beauty and power, were messengers of the divine will, in constant praise and service to the Creator. But in the silence of the stars, something unusual began to germinate in the hearts of the highest among them. Lucifer, the angel of light, was the most splendid of all. His beauty was incomparable, and his wisdom immeasurable. But as he grew in his own perfection, something insidious began to grow within him. He no longer desired to be a servant of God. He desired to be like him. This thought, a spark of pride, germinated and began to take shape as he gathered around him other angels, seducing them with promises of power and freedom. We will be as the high heavens. Our kingdom will be eternal. There is nothing God can offer that will satisfy us, he said, spreading his rebellious vision. At first, only a few of the most powerful, those with impetuous hearts, joined Lucifer. Together, they formed a secret alliance and vowed to overthrow the established order. They questioned divine authority, challenged the limits of creation, and defied God's sovereignty. This silent but growing act of rebellion was like a shadow that began to cover the eternal brightness of heaven's light. The Book of Enoch, in turn, describes fallen angels called the Watchers, who came down to earth and took human wives, corrupting the purity of creation and spawning a race of giants known as the Nephilim. However, this act was not isolated from the events that took place in heaven. Lucifer's seduction led many of his companions to rebel against God. His influence knew no bounds, and war in the heavens was about to begin. Yet it was not long before the Lord, sensing the growing rebellion, decided to act. His power was absolute, and his justice immutable. The story of the fall of the angels, then, began to be written not only as a battle between the forces of good and evil, but also as an eternal lesson in the price of pride and disobedience. Lucifer's pride knew no bounds. His mind, once faithful to the Creator, was now filled with insatiable ambition. He and the angels who followed him believed that God's power could be challenged, that the established order could be overthrown, and that they themselves could rule with their own wisdom. Lucifer, the most beautiful and intelligent angel, became the leader of this heavenly rebellion, now called the Great Uprising. The war began not with the sound of swords or shouts, but with the silent division of hearts and intentions. The seed of doubt planted by Lucifer grew rapidly, and soon more than a third of the angels had joined his cause. They believed they could overthrow God, or at least divide his power. Lucifer's pride had turned into a manifesto of autonomy, a burning desire to rule the heavens, to be worshipped as the Creator, and to shape the destiny of the universe. As the angels loyal to God saw the gravity of their betrayal, the entire heavens seemed to tremble with the clash of opposing intentions. Celestial beings who had once danced in harmony and praise were now aligning themselves into factions. Confrontation was approaching, and the battle would be fought in the spiritual realms, where the forces of light and darkness would clash. God, seeing the growing chaos in the heavens, did not stand by. His reaction was immediate, but it was not hasty. He sent his legions of faithful angels to check the advance of Lucifer and his followers. The heavenly war began, a war in which every blow of the sword of light against the forces of darkness resounded like thunder in the hearts of the angels. The battle was not only physical, but also moral and spiritual. The fallen angels, led by Lucifer, not only challenged divine authority, but also distorted the beauty of creation, which was now out of harmony. The battle in the heavens raged, with the forces of light and darkness clashing, with the fate of the universe hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, the faithful angels united in a ruthless resistance. Michael, the strongest and most faithful archangel, led the wing of the heavenly warriors. His sword, forged in divine truth, cut through the bonds of corruption and pride that encircled the hearts of the traitorous angels. But the fallen angels were ferocious. They had been blinded by Lucifer's seduction and were unwilling to retreat. Every battle that raged in the heavens was a reflection of the inner turmoil that raged within the hearts of the rebellious angels. They were so consumed by arrogance that they did not see their impending downfall. The Book of Enoch reveals that as war raged in heaven, fallen angels known as the Watchers descended to earth, corrupting humanity and violating the divine plan. This event was not a simple invasion, but a reflection of Lucifer's rebellion, which sought to spread its influence throughout the cosmos, including the earth. As the faithful and the fallen angels fought, the atmosphere of heaven became increasingly tense. Lucifer's army knew that it could not win without taking God's leadership, and so each battle that took place in the heavenly heights was imbued with a burning desire for domination. The climactic moment was approaching, when the end of the war in heaven would give way to a new reality, where God's justice would be manifested eternally. The battle in heaven had become a desperate struggle. On one side, the angels loyal to God, led by Michael, with their flaming swords and divine power. On the other, the fallen angels, under the command of Lucifer, who, blinded by pride, believed that they could conquer the heavenly kingdom. The confrontation was apocalyptic, as if the very stars were trembling before the magnitude of the war. Lucifer, the proudest and most courageous of the angels, fought with all his might, but as the battle dragged on, his confidence began to waver. The strength and clarity of the faithful angels, who fought with the purity of God's will, were insurmountable. Michael's sword cut through the darkness, and the fallen angels began to give way, one by one. The great leader of the rebellion, who had only recently felt invincible, saw defeat approaching. With a cry of fury, Lucifer and his followers attempted one more offensive, but the power of God could not be challenged. At the height of the heavenly war, a supernatural tremor shook the universe. The hand of God, implacable and just, became visible. He ordered the rebel army to be cast out of heaven. The majesty of his command was absolute. Michael, with unparalleled strength, overthrew Lucifer and his followers. The fall was like a lightning bolt that tore through the sky, a light against the darkness that was soon extinguished. With one decisive blow, the rebel army was defeated and cast into the abyss of eternal darkness. There was no more room in heaven for those who defied divine authority. The Bible tells us that the great dragon was cast out, that ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He, who once shone among the stars, was now cast into hell, along with the angels who followed him. Their fate was sealed, and the place prepared for them was an endless abyss, where the light of God would never again reach. However, the defeat was not only a punishment for the fallen angels, it was also a warning to all created beings. Pride and rebellion against divine order would never go unpunished. Creation was in the balance, but this heavenly struggle had far greater implications than simply the expulsion of Lucifer and his followers. The Book of Enoch reveals that after their fall, the fallen angels did not disappear from existence. Instead, they were imprisoned, held until the final judgment day, where they would face eternal damnation. During their fall, many of these angels also brought corruption to the earth, teaching humans forbidden knowledge and corrupting their nature. The impact of their actions rippled throughout creation, and the earth began to change. Humanity, now marked by this evil presence, would face a new age of temptation and sin. The once pristine earth began to reflect the effects of the heavenly war. The Nephilim, giant hybrids created by the union of the Watchers with human women, spread violence and corruption. The influence of the fallen angels did not end with their fall, but transformed the very nature of creation. The once perfect divine order was now threatened. Sin had crept in, and the earth wept under the weight of transgression. At the same time, the victory of Michael and the faithful angels brought about the partial restoration of heaven, but the price of sin and rebellion would be paid for generations to come. God's great plan was beginning to unfold, in which redemption and judgment would intertwine, setting the stage for the redemption of humanity and the ultimate destiny of the entire universe. After the defeat and imprisonment of the fallen angels, the universe still bore the scars of the Great Rebellion. The balance of creation had been disrupted, and the forces of darkness continued to haunt earth and heaven, awaiting the final moment when divine judgment would be fully manifested. Lucifer's fall was not just a chapter in defeat, but the prelude to a journey of redemption and destruction that would echo throughout human history. God, in His infinite wisdom, did not allow the work of creation to be defined by the fall, but also by the opportunity for restoration. The struggle between the forces of good and evil was not limited to the war in the heavens, but began to unfold in human lives. Sin, corrupted by the fallen angels, took over the earth, and men began to follow paths of destruction. But God, in His mercy, did not abandon them. The Book of Enoch narrates that the Watchers, upon descending to earth, taught humans forbidden arts, such as the making of weapons, magic, and sorcery. This further deepened the corruption of man, who now faced a struggle between God's teachings and the temptations that the fallen angels brought with them. However, as God had promised, He would not let His creation be lost in the clutches of evil. The history of redemption would be marked by the coming of a Messiah, a promised Savior who would restore the lost order and defeat forever the forces of darkness. The lineage of Adam, through the centuries, would hold the hope of restoration. The sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross would become the culmination of the divine plan, where evil, represented by Satan and his followers, would finally be defeated. While the fallen angels awaited their final judgment in an endless abyss, God would send them one last opportunity for salvation. Those who accepted God's mercy would be freed from the corruption of darkness, while those who clung to rebellion would face eternal destruction. The apocalypse, the end of time, would bring the final resolution of this cosmic battle. The Book of Revelation reveals that in the end, God will make the heavens and the earth new, where there will be no more pain, suffering, or corruption. Evil will be eradicated, and those who are faithful to Him will reign with Him for all eternity. The fight against Lucifer, the ancient serpent, will be definitively won, and God's victory will be clear to the entire universe. The redemption that began with the promise of a Savior will be consummated in the restoration of God's eternal kingdom. The imprisonment of the fallen angels and their final destiny in the lake of fire will be an eternal sentence, a sign of God's justice that, although patient, will never fail. Creation will be purified, and God's original plan will be restored. But until then, humanity will continue to struggle against the corruption of evil, while awaiting the second coming of Christ. The cycle of fall and redemption, which was drawn in the heavens, will continue to unfold in human lives until, in the end, light will forever overcome darkness.